book is going to be for me, and I completely and totally understand that. Like, I'm not trying to make every book about me, but these are the ones that just really, oh my gosh, they just, they weren't my jam at all. Y'all, if you're new here, my name is Me Queen, and I'm gonna be telling you about the books that just did not sit right with me in 2023. These are my worst rated books, and in case you're wondering, how do you remember all the books that you didn't like, I keep them in my book club journal where I will rate every single book after I read it, and I will write in different details. So I kept track of all the ones that I didn't like, and actually most of the books were books that were sent to me by publishers. A lot of these are new releases, although one of them is a book that I picked up myself, so I'm kind of disappointed that it wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be. But let's just get right on into it. The first book that I did not like came with my blind date with the book. So this one is Eene. So this is actually a movie, which I did not see the movie. I also didn't finish this book. I normally give a book 100 pages before I put it down and give up on it entirely. I don't even think I got to 100 pages of this book, to be totally honest. It is about a girl who has an abusive father, and she works in a correctional facility, and she's trying to figure out how to escape her current situation. So she lives in a small town, and they just don't have anything for her. What I didn't like about this book is that it is all inner narrative. It's barely any dialogue. She rarely interacts with other characters, and even when she does, they don't really speak. I like books where the characters interact with other characters and when they have, I guess, funny or comedic thoughts, and this girl was just so serious. This felt like a very serious book. There wasn't any comic relief, or at least I didn't get to it, because again, I did not finish this book. I think I stopped at the point where she meets a new coworker, and that's when people said that this book starts to pick up, because I did look at reviews after I started reading it. I just don't like it when I have to read through 100 pages to get to the good part. Like, it's just not the book for me. Get to the point, like in the first chapter. If I don't know what the book is about in the first chapter, you're already like starting down here. I want you to throw me into the action and tell me what's going on, and this book just didn't do that. I also don't really like books where it's just a huge chunk of text, like a lot. I mean, like literally every page was like just text and no dialogue. So not the book for me. Also didn't see the movie, but if you read this or saw the movie, let me know what you think in the comments. Next book was also from my blind date with a book, and this was called Stargazer by Lori Petru. I think I'm saying that correctly. I had never heard of this book. Like I said, it was from my blind date with a book, and it is about two girls that are really great friends, and one girl starts to become a star, and she is more of a public figure, and the other girl isn't. So it talks about the jealousy and the animosity that the other girl has towards the star best friend. And I got to 50 pages. I did not finish this book. This is another one where it is mostly chunk text. It is told between different POVs, so you're in the POV of one girl versus another, and it also starts with the girls that are in high school. I just didn't like the concept of this book. Again, I didn't pick it out myself. The description for the blind date did say that it was jealous friends, so I thought that that's where, you know, the book would start. But this is another one where it takes a long time to build up to what's actually going on, like the problem, right? It just gives you a ton of background about the characters from the different perspectives or the different POVs, but it just didn't hit for me. I think I got to page, let's see, I got to page 48 before I put this one down, so it definitely was not for me. But if you have read it, let me know what you thought about it in the comments. Next is The Joy Strategist by Grace Harry. So this was a book that was sent to me by a publisher, and it was released this year, I believe. This actually gave an entire PR package, so I was actually really excited to read it myself. And it is a self-help book, so it's more about how to maintain your happiness no matter what type of situation you're going through. So the author herself has been through a ton of things. Like, she's been through a lot, and she decided to write the book because people have always asked her, how do you maintain your happiness or just your sense of joy with all of this madness going on in your life? The concept of the book was great, which is why I asked for it. So publishers will email me and ask me if I'm interested in accepting the book, and I don't accept all the books if they aren't topics or have themes that I would be interested in. This one I was interested in because I like self-help books. However, the chapters of this book just don't really make sense to me. I didn't really resonate with the format. This is a self-help book that kind of has a journal within it, so it gives you different journal prompts, and it also gives you things to talk about and think about at the end of the chapter. And I just did not like the questions. At one point, the book becomes kind of woo-woo, or it takes a more spiritual approach, which is fine. I have read spirituality books before, but I felt like it was totally out of the blue in this book. Like, if you're gonna take a spiritual approach, I feel like it should be a little bit more fluid throughout. And this one had like a random chapter in the middle that was about spirituality, manifestation, and believing in yourself, and kind of like laws of the universe, but it just didn't fit in this book, like with the rest of the chapters. I also think the order of the chapters were out of order. Like, it could have just gone in a totally different direction. Overall, not the book for me. Yeah, I wouldn't read this again. Next book was also a blind date with a book. I did finish this one. So this one was one that I did finish. This one is called Bare to You, and it's by Sylvia Day. So this is a dark romance, and I typically do not read dark romances, although I did read 50 Shades of Grey, like that entire series. So the blind date description said 50 Shades but better. And since I had read 50 Shades, I was like, oh, bet, love this, let's read it. And it was literally 50 Shades. Basically, the character names were changed and the setting was changed, but I felt like it was the exact same book. This was definitely not something I would pick up on my own, even though I did read the whole thing. It just isn't a book that I would naturally be interested in. I feel like this got a lot of attention because it was so similar to 50 Shades, but I still don't know what made it better. I don't think it was better than 50 Shades. I think it was honestly a carbon copy of 50 Shades. Yeah, it just wasn't for me. I think some of the scenes, some of the spicy scenes were very tasteful, although some of them were totally unnecessary, but all their spicy themes were brought about through anger and yelling at each other and fighting. So it was like angry spice. Also not my jam. I don't know, I just couldn't, I couldn't get into this, even though I did read the whole thing. I was just like thinking about things in the back of my mind. So this one was not for me either. But again, it was not a book that I picked out myself. So that is that. So this next book is The Engagement Party, and this one was sent to me by publisher. So this one was released in December 5th, I believe, and the plot sounded so interesting. So it's about a woman who is getting engaged, and she is throwing a party for her fiance's friends from college, and they haven't spoken to each other since their college days because the last time they were together, one of their friends died. The story is about them uncovering what actually happened to the friend that passed away all those years ago when they were in college, and what actually happened to her. So I thought the topic was right. I was like, oh, this is so great. Like, I'm gonna enjoy this. Like, somebody's gonna die. This is gonna be good. There was just way too many characters in this for my liking. And even as you got halfway through the book, they were still introducing new characters. So I don't like that. I think 4 characters max is my personal max, because afterwards it just gets confusing and I feel like I have to take notes on all the characters, and I don't like that at all. I also felt like there were so many red herrings, but also way too many twists to even follow the story. So by the end of the novel, I figured out what happened, but I didn't really remember how we had gotten there. Like, it just was so long. I felt like it could have been at least 50 pages shorter. The last few scenes before the epilogue could have been cut down, like, or cut in half, or cut out. I don't know, it was just too much. I think the main thing to make this better, in my opinion, would be to have less characters, or to have less POVs, because you get every character's POV, which sometimes I don't think is totally necessary. But I have seen a lot more books take on that approach and that style. If you were to take on that style, I would say keep it to 4, like 4 max, so that everyone can still follow the story. 6+ was way too many. It's too much. It's too much. And then last but not least is the Osawa Murders. I think I'm saying that correctly. So this book I picked up on my own. I picked this one out myself, and I was totally upset about it. I was so excited to read this book, and it wasn't what I thought it was. First of all, it took me about 70 pages to realize that this was actually a translated book. So this was written in Japanese and it was translated to English. Although that shouldn't really change the plot of the story, I feel like it changes some of the word usage in the story, because sometimes the words just didn't really fit correctly in a sentence, if you know what I mean. There are a lot of languages that just don't directly translate to English. Totally understand that. They did have a translator. My camera died, but I'm finishing this recording on my phone because I am determined to do it today. Anyway, so the other thing I didn't like about this book was that it was written as if you were talking to someone. The premise of the book is that a mass murder occurs in this huge house and 17 people die by poisoning. So one of the people, who was a young child at the time, grew up without knowing the exact details of what happened and how this went about. So she decides to write a book about the murders that took place. Then years later, so after the book has been released, the detective goes back, reads the novel, and wants to interview all the people that she interviewed, including the author, to figure out what actually happened to the people because the murders remained unsolved. Basically, this book is 10 years after the book was written and published about the murders. So the timeline's a little wonky. You have to make sure you're thinking about the right time frame, but also where it's mostly dialogue, except you don't hear one character's side of the dialogue. So it would be as if you're talking to someone, but only your words that you're saying to that other person is the manuscript for the book. So I didn't like that style. It took me a little bit to get used to it, and once I did get used to it, the POV changed. It didn't remain the same, which I did not like at all. So at one point it was in third person where you're learning all of the things about the detective who's doing research about the murders that happened 20 years ago. And then at another point, you're the detective and you're not reading the words that you're saying to other people, but instead you're just reading the words that they are saying to you as a detective. I didn't like it. It was very difficult to follow because it swapped in the middle of the book and then it kept switching and swapping, which, like, if you're going to choose different POVs, at least be consistent about it. I don't know, it just was not the book for me. I felt like it was really interesting in the first half. In the second half, I was totally lost. I was just like, what is going on? Why do POVs keep changing? Why is the narrator changing? Like, what's actually happening? Who is who? By the end, I figured out what actually had happened, but again, didn't really know how we had gotten there. So yeah, overall, this wasn't a good book to me. So those are the books that I think were the worst ones that I read of this year. As I'm recording this, the year is not over, so there is room for more. But if you guys have read any of these books and think that they were also pretty bad, let me know what you think in the comments, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.